Lotta Wolves, episode 38 of season 2. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
And I'm Paul LePage.
And our good friend from Baltimore, Mr. Danny Paletti. How's it going, Danny?
Pretty good, Josh. Long time no see.
I know, right? So Danny and I, we got to know each other pretty well. We were roomies over the weekend in Chicago, so that was a good time. Got to hang out, and we'll definitely go into the Chicago meetup, which was really just a super fun event. Really glad that the club had it. And I got a chance to talk to Joe Hunt and several other people about ideas they have for this meetup in the future. So really awesome to, see what we can come up with, what they're going to come up with in the future. But we'll talk about the two games. The first one, it was Man City. We'll go on to Norwich. Norwich, it was a 1-1 draw on Sunday against Norwich City. The Man City was, look, it's Man City, 5-1 against Wolves with De Bruyne scoring a hat trick. Or no, scoring 4 goals. Sorry, I lost track.
Baker's hat trick.
Yeah, Paul, what were your thoughts as far as the two games? I mean, there wasn't really much to say about the Man City.
Only that it was like a continuation on Sunday, making Timo Pukki look like Kevin De Bruyne running through 3 times pretty much and scoring one of them. So that what summed it up for me is we're on this really bad run, bad form. Where's that defensive solidity gone? And is it all down to Max Kilman? Is it everything that was coming down Johnny's side, Man City, or Bolly on Sunday? It's just really hard to pinpoint and put your finger on it, and how it's just at a flick of a switch. We're making Norwich look like Man City on Sunday. We're making Man City look like Man City versus a Sunday League team in the midweek. It was that bad. So it just really goes to a real sucker punch at the end of the season, and just it's a struggle really to find absolute any positives as it's just fizzled completely out.
I mean, I'd say there's one positive, and that is Mr. Chiquinho, who Danny and I spent a lot of time talking about this weekend. Danny, I mean, again, he made a big impact in the two games.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the few bright notes in the Man City game. I don't know if that right side, what exactly is wrong with it, but it seems like a combination of Johnny having to cover for Chiquinho sometimes, and then also Bolly's been out of form. But at least when we were attacking, Chiquinho looks really great. No one's ever going to replace Adama's pure pace and power, but man, that kid has a pinpoint cross sometimes, and he seems to hit them about 2 out of 3 times. And given the crosses that we've had over the last 18 months, I'll take 2 out of 3, no problem.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious to see if they try and develop him to be the free kick specialist with just how accurate he's been, especially on corners. I'd like to see that. You mentioned Willy Bolly. Obviously, I think we've definitely seen the end of Roman Saiz now with Wolves. That's pretty much been assured from his talking this last week. You think we're seeing the end of Willy Bolly as well, Paul?
I think there's a fair chance based on the age and form and the players that are potentially lined up in that spot when Kilman comes back. I think, again, it's going to be a big summer, and depending on what happens, coaching-wise, could be a big transition in terms of formation as well. So I don't think Bolly's in that good a situation now, given his age and the potential to transition to a back 4. I think he's far away. He's a far way away from being considered a starter in a 4, and pretty lucky to be hanging on to a starting place, even in a 5 at the moment.
Yeah, I think if Kilman was healthy, he'd be coming off the bench. I think that's pretty guaranteed. Danny, obviously getting to see Toti Gomez in there against Norwich City, and you could probably really make the argument he was man of the match for Wolves as well.
Yeah, if you're looking at the whole 90 minutes, it has to be Tony Gomez. I mean, that's maybe not very fair because we looked pretty terrible in the first 45. So he was the bright spot there. But over the 90 minutes, I don't know if anybody did as much credit to themselves as him. And it was great to see him in. I know a lot of people have been calling for him to be starting including Josh. Because it's not just Bali. I mean, Saiss has had his ups and downs in the last, well, I mean, ever since AFCON really, but especially in the last month as the whole team has suffered for form. But everybody's been wondering what Tony Gomez can do to get in, because he's a bit like Kilman was last year, where he hasn't gotten many minutes, but he also hasn't seemed to let us down in the time that he's been in. And he continued that this time, I'm happy to say.
Yeah, I'm thinking they didn't want to throw him in there against Man City. Norwich definitely felt like the time to play him. I would have been okay with Luke Kundle as well, but once Luke Kundle played in that U23s game, that was pretty much knocked him out for Sunday's game. Paul, obviously a big talking point there was at halftime in the Norwich game where Coady was replaced at halftime, and they went with, was it a back four? Was it a hybrid back five with Johnny moving over? It seemed like it was like constantly changing. Were you able to kind of pinpoint what formation we were using?
I thought it looked a more distinct 4-4-2. Well, more of a four at the back, definitely. And to Bruno's comments afterwards, that seemed to be what he was, what he'd wanted, in that out of the two, possibly the two defenders who could have been taken off, Bolly was in a better position, better skill to his game in terms of aerial duels and winning those types of battles as a centre back against Pukki. Whereas sometimes I think that it's a disservice to Coady in that he's often the fall guy and he'll take it on the chin, and he's the easiest one to hook because, you know, he'll be professional about it and he'll probably take it in the way that it's intended. But I wouldn't have had a complaint with either of them coming off yesterday, really. So,
do you think that is what the future is going to be there? Do you think we're finally seeing that back four, Danny, that we're going to want to use next year?
I'm sure that Lodge is going to try. It's going to depend so much on who comes in. You know, if we end up with center backs that aren't bringing in any center back who's not better than what we already have. So let's say someone who maybe is like as consistent as Kilman, but more experienced. You know, I think he's going to probably want to try to keep Conor Coady in a back four just to have that stability. But obviously a lot can change if we bring in different types of players who can play in different ways. I agree. I think Coady was a little bit hard done by to come off, you know. It's like you still need that big aerial presence from Willy Bali, but he was just making so many mistakes, and a lot of times it ends up being Conor Coady who looks bad for them, because then he's chasing someone down from his natural position. He has to go racing over to another side, and Coady ends up looking slow, but the guy he's running to got a head start. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I hate to see Coady kind of used as a scapegoat, because it did kind of feel like that is what happened there at halftime. I'm going to be curious his role on the team going forward. I think we can all agree that he's so important just as a vocal leader on the field. But then when he's with England, they say he's just as good a leader when he doesn't play all the time. Do you think, Paul, that Coady has to be in the starting 11 to make that leadership impact for Wolves?
I don't think so. I think the point of having him around the squad is certainly a valid one. And it's interesting that you bring up England, because that's more or less often where he started, in the flat back four. So it's not like he's completely discounted from playing there either. So I really hope that if a transition happens and we do go to a back four, that he's retained to at least to try and compete for a place. because, again, just having him in and around the squad will be useful. And I wouldn't want to write him off either. We've already seen him being able to transition to a sweeper. People didn't think that was feasible to begin with, and look what he accomplished. So now I'd be more than content to retain him and at least give him a shot at getting a starting jersey for sure.
I am terrified if they let Coady leave, and Saiz is probably leaving. If Neves leaves, if Ruddy leaves, who's going to be the leader of the team? Like, that could turn into a significant issue. Like, then you're almost forced to have Moutinho, but I feel like there needs to be kind of a younger leader as well on that team. That could turn into a big issue next year, right, Danny? Who do you think would have to step up?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Who we have right now would have to be Moutinho if those people left. I think it's funny that we often worry about, either Coady gets pushed aside, sent off to another team, whatever, or he plays like he plays now, which is every single game. And it's just, those aren't the only two options. A lot of times
That's a great point.
I feel like, the reactionary side of the Wolves fans, like they see Coady have a bad game and it's like, oh, he can't play at this level and he can't play in a back four. But as Paul said, I mean, he seems to be able to do it at least on some level. And there are plenty of club captains in the league even. Mark Noble just retired essentially. Wes Morgan is another one that comes to mind who, for one reason or another haven't been starting every single game. And I'm not ready to put Coady out to pasture. I think he still has several good years of playing at this level,
Agreed.
but it also doesn't mean that he has to be playing 90 minutes every single game. There could be games where he starts on the bench or games that he doesn't come on at all, and he'll still have that effect on the team. I mean, that's the strength that he gives you. That's the value that he has. So I'd be surprised if they let him go. We talked a bit about this over the weekend, unless it was a really astronomical offer that we couldn't say no to. I don't see him going anywhere.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to be a matter of, like, honestly, after Sunday's game, this Sunday's game, sitting him down and going, we still want you to be a part of the team. We're going to be going to a back four, and just tell him we maybe can't guarantee you starting every game. Are you okay with that? And hopefully he will. Hopefully his love for Wolves is so high, which I feel like it is. I feel like he's so ingrained in the community. I think he'd probably just ask for a chance to compete. But yeah, I really worry leadership-wise because it seems like Ruddy's out. And then, obviously, the big elephant in the room that we haven't talked about yet was Neves, the chance that the fans were going to riot if he goes, him walking around the pitch after holding his little kid crying. Do you think that was it, Paul? Do you think we only see Neves in for one more game in a Wolves kit?
I think so. I think Sunday really highlighted it for me, and what appeared to be his emotion to it all seemed like a last nail in the coffin, where I was kind of, up until a point, I was thinking that we'd be keeping him. And I think this had maybe somewhat to do with a little of some of the talk around the coach and the dressing room and the players like that. It seemed to me that Neves was one that would have stuck around, and I think would have continued under Large if he's the guy going forwards, because obviously it's all rumour and speculation, but apparently it was Neves wanting out if Nuno had stayed. So having that change in manager, bringing him out even more this season. He's had a great season as a body of work. Take away the time out for an injury in those games coming back. But I feel that it was, we'd have kept him with European football, I think. And having that confirmed on Sunday that it's a no really indicated that the wheels are in motion for him to depart, and he'll be off to pastures new.
There's going to be a lot of heartbroken people, a lot of heartbroken fans. I think the players are going to be heartbroken. I think Lodge is going to be heartbroken. So yeah, it's tough. But this came in the Spears article, and I mean we can't really be surprised about it. He did say, basically Roman Saiz, Fernando Marsal, both gone. Ruddy, we don't know. By the way, Paul, can you give me credit on Wednesday calling that Ruddy was going to start in
It
goal?
was, yeah.
You thought I was crazy.
I did, thinking there was still something to play for and that it was too sentimental, but now he got his run out, and we'll probably see it again on Sunday as well. So,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so I don't know. He seems kind of up in the air. I would guess he's going to go. Moutinho, that could go either way, I think, because his contract's expiring. He did say, Willie Bolly's lost half a yard of pace. I would say it's a little bit more than that, honestly. Adama, it was interesting. He said he has a year left and he'll be sold, surely, if he's unwilling to sign the substantial offer Wolves presented him. So that does leave open the fact that Wolves still may have that offer they offered him. And we'll talk about Adama here in a little bit. Then you've got Dendoncker, who may move on for guaranteed first team football, especially in a World Cup year. I actually think that is going to happen. Raul Jimenez might be thinking it's time for a fresh start. It's not going to happen. I'll go into more of that after talking to people in Chicago. It's not going to happen. And then there's Neves. If Lodge and the fans want that summer refresh, want that summer rebuilding, Neves probably has to go to fund it. Wolves are still a sell to buy club, and even if they get 20 million plus pounds for Traore or a big 8-figure fee for Morgan Gibbs White, for example, that's still only going to fund a small number of quality first team additions, and Lodge wants a bigger squad than this season. It's tough. It's really tough. And then after the game, the Barcelona rumors kicked up again. Barcelona, oh, we're broke. We can't afford Adama. Also Barcelona, here, take our young trash in exchange for Neves. No. Danny, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think he's a done deal as well now, Neves? And do you think it's to Barcelona?
That's interesting. I always assume that these things are way more complicated than we assume, than just a player wants to move up in the football world. I mean, if that was true, I think Neves would have been gone last summer or even before to a place like Man United. I think teams like that, or even Arsenal, were looking at him. And if he was just looking to move up to a more likely Champions League team, then he could have done that, although it looks like neither of those teams will make it this year. But, there could be so many more complicated things. I mean, like you mentioned with Dendoncker wanting to go because it's a World Cup year and wanting to be playing regularly, I think that that's completely valid. You also wonder, what exactly Ruben Neves wants. Maybe Barcelona is that thing. I don't know. But it's like, with Adama, Barcelona was his dream move, and it has fallen through in some way, and we don't know what that's going to do to his thinking about a potential Wolves deal. So again, when I look at Neves, tearfully waving to the fans at the end of that game, I agree that he's, more than likely gone. If I was going to put money on it, I'd say he's not going to be here at the start of next season. But he also is probably feeling emotional because he knows exactly that he's very likely going to go somewhere else, but that a deal isn't done yet. And so it really depends. And, I'm definitely clutching at straws here, but, there's always an outside chance that we find a way to fund some moves that impresses him and that we look like we're going to be building something around him and he stays. We just don't know what's going on back there.
Two things I would like to point to just to give a little bit of hope. Okay, number one, there's all these talks, well, Neves will want to play Champions League football, stuff like that. Remember, he was playing Champions League football and left for a championship team. Not even a Premier League team, a championship team. Now, I'm sure there was money involved, but, I mean, that's to say that kind of says something right there. Is playing Europe that important to him? I don't know. The other is Harry Kane kind of had the same type of deal, walking around Tottenham Stadium, woo, waving to everybody, blowing kisses, and then he ended up coming back the next year. So I don't know.
Yeah, in the end, a lot of times we just don't know what's happening with these players. I mean, obviously we all know one of the big reasons Neves is stuck around for so long is because of how settled he is with his family. And that's never something that's brought up. And now, do I think he's definitely going to stay because his family loves him in Wolverhampton? I don't think so. But my point is that there's always more to it in their decision making than just, oh, are Man United in the Champions League? I'll go there, you know?
Yeah, not so much. So I kind of mentioned with Dama there. I think Barcelona, unless they do agree to a Trincao swap, I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't think the Trincao swap's going to happen because look, shouldn't Norwich have been a game he was in? I mean, he wasn't. It seems like the decision's kind of made there. Adama has 1 year left in that contract. Okay, so you look at it, well, they could sell him for a loss, right? Because that would be most likely. I'd rather just keep him, play out the contract, and maybe he will sign a deal going, well, I know I'm going to play here. I'm seeing now going to a big club, it's not necessarily greener on the other side. Maybe he stays. Maybe this was an eye-opening thing. And maybe Wolves see that he is an important piece as well because you can kind of trace where things started to go wrong was after he left the squad. What do you think, Paul?
I think there is some element in that grass is always greener. And it's just, I think for Traore, I think so much just hinges on what is going to be this transition. So is Large the guy, if he is he going to have his players come in? And if so, is Traore one of those? Is he potentially part of a formation that Large wants to play? So I think it's tricky. You can't just, there's no obvious route anymore. And this, by taking this move, he's probably devalued himself some as well, both
Absolutely.
personally and his value for others, because other teams will be looking at him thinking, well, he did go to Barcelona and didn't set the world on fire there. So has both his expectations and potential expectations of suitors come down, that he may not necessarily be in that top four type of move. Is he a level above the Wolves, but one less than a super team? So there's just so many spinning plates this summer, and where they're going to fall, who knows? It's crazy.
Well, so let's go ahead and turn the talk to some good stuff. And that was Chicago over the weekend. Boy, what a really fun thing. The club had organized the Wolves USA meetup in Chicago. It started on Friday night. Danny and I weren't able to make it to that, but some of our friends of the show, like Dan John, David Copey, were able to make it. George Elokobi was there on Friday answering questions. They said it was really a great time, kind of a little smaller of a group for that. Saturday there was a supporters game. And then Sunday was the big event at the Piggery. So we all made the trek. It was just, about a mile away from Wrigley Field. A nice little place that opened early for us. Great food and a lot of fun getting to meet. Paul, let me tell you, I feel really good about the work we're doing with this podcast now after talking to several people there. And excuse me, I'm horrible with names, so I can't remember everybody's names. But I was being told by a fan from Toronto, several from Chicago, from Minnesota, hey, we listen to the podcast. We love what you guys are doing. And let me be the first to say thank you to everybody that listens. Paul especially puts a lot of work into this. Like, he really has busted his butt to get this going. And to know that not only people are listening, but really enjoying it was really a cool thing to hear. I wish they could have told you in person, Paul, because you really are the brains behind this.
No, and that is just good to hear. And we get social media messages and emails out the blue as well. So thank you for those listeners. I'm getting all teary-eyed and emotional. Whole Lot of Wolves isn't going anywhere, so thanks for the support, and we'll keep at it.
And we got a lot of positive feedback from the club as well. Joe Hunt, who's the international projects manager, who we actually spoke to last season. Paul, he was there. And he said he doesn't get to listen to every episode, but the ones he's like, you guys are really doing a great job. So, it's nice to know that people from the club are recognizing it. And I got to talk to George Elokobi. We'll have our little interview with him here in a little bit. And he started following Whole Lotta Wolves on Twitter. Did you notice that, Paul?
Yeah, things you'd love to see.
He was very intrigued by just how these U.S. supporters are following the club. And, just how they've really embraced it in doing stuff like this podcast. He was really intrigued by it. So the big question that we all had going into that meetup was, what is the deal with this summer? Well, we talked to them. The deal is, we don't know. I'd say they're coming. They're coming in some aspect to North America. Talking to Joe Hunt, I was able to get out a few things. He did say they thought they had a 4-team agreement for a mini tournament in place, and then 2 of the teams backed out. I tried to pressure him to figure out where the place was and the teams were. He wouldn't budge. My theory there is that was Man City and Club America in Houston. I think it was going to be a doubleheader. And then I think Man City and Club America said, we don't need you guys to sell out the stadium. We'll just keep all the money. So I think that's what happened. They did say Texas is one of the spots they're trying for. So they still have a lot of ambers in the fire to see where they can go. They are definitely taking the Mexican fans into consideration with this because of Raul. And after talking to several people with the club, there's just no way Raul's leaving. Unless Raul flat out says, I want to go. There's just so much importance. Even the videos that they were making this weekend from the meetup, they were making a Spanish version specifically for the Mexican fans, which is great. Like, that's really cool to hear. So yeah, that is taken into consideration. They did say they hope to have something announced within the next 2 or 3 weeks. They're just as frustrated as we are that there's not dates or locations yet. And even Joe Hunt admitted to me, we're still learning this stuff on the fly. Like the Chicago meetup, it did take a while for kind of the plans to come together. He's like, I know we were planning to come out for 4 months ago. He said it was just a matter of finding a place. And this was good experience for finding the place in Chicago. He said that the Piggery was like the 3rd or 4th place they went to. The second place, they thought they had a deal where they was going to host it, and then they came back and said, yeah, we'll let you do it for $6,000. What? We're not going to do that. So the Piggery let them in for free. I did join the Houston Chamber of Commerce, as most of the guys were joking about when talking to them about coming to Houston for a meetup, because they said they want to do 1 to 2 meetups a year after seeing how fun the Chicago one was, and they want to move it to different cities. So I was definitely pitching Houston, Paul, and I may have dropped your name as far as saying Paul will be so organized he'll have an itinerary for everybody. So no, that was a big laugh. Chris Rhodes from Ohio, they were getting a kick out of that, of me just really pitching Houston. But overall, it was glad to hear the club, somebody in management like that say, hey, we are learning on the fly. We know that this is a little frustrating because so many details are coming out later. It's nice to see just recognition instead of just treating the fans like, oh, they'll just show up whenever we say that they're going to come or whatnot. So they are conscious about that. So that's the update I have, Paul. Did I miss anything, Danny? Was that most of what you got too?
No, I mean, that's about it. It was just great getting to see all these people who are just, Twitter faces, or in some cases, people with fake Twitter profiles. They'll have George Elokobi or Richard Stearman or whatever, but now getting to see their actual face it's such a big country, and it's so rare that we get to meet any Wolves fans from anywhere outside of just our city. It was just great to get to see everybody.
Yeah, and we got to spend a lot of time with, Chris Wood, like I said, Chris Rhodes. We had David Copey and his wife Kristen from New York Wolves. They had to leave a little bit early, but Dan John stuck around from New York Wolves. Dan was really getting everybody getting the songs going in the pub, which was pretty cool to see. He was having a grand old time, and got to meet Todd DeWitt and his wife Michelle from Colorado Wolves. They've moved up to Minnesota now and are going to try and start a group there. And really just all the people from Chicago and Toronto and everything. It was really cool, like Danny said, to be able to to meet these people in person. I feel like they were already friends. Like, everybody's going to shake my hand, and I'm like, man, forget that. It's hug time, man. So just a ton of fun, and thank you to Chris and Chris for going to the Field Museum with me so I could dinosaur geek out over Sue. Danny, what was your favorite part of the meetup?
I mean, it's hard to get past George Elokobi. I mean, it's just, even as a newer Wolves fan, you still, all the stories about him trickle through and how he's just an insanely nice guy. And I'm here to report that they're all 100% true. He is a very nice, extremely genuine guy. He has a lot of time for all the fans. It's really great. Just a great little chat I had with him, and I know Josh had a nice long talk with him, but he was working the crowd. He's great at those events, man. He's just moving around, chatting with everybody. That was a real highlight.
Yeah, and speaking of that interview, let's check it out now, Paul. My interview with George Elokobi at the Piggery in Chicago. I'm with Wolves legend George Elokobi. How's it going, George?
Oh, amazing. Fantastic.
Well, tell me how retirement's going. I know you just announced it. Are you excited, a little disappointed?
No, I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I left at the right time, and I left on a high. And this is important for me to leave the game on a high, and I left on my own terms, so I'm happy.
I heard you were surprised with your family from Dallas came up. Is that right?
Yeah, I was quite shocked to see them. They surprised me. It was a great surprise. I hadn't seen my sister for 10 years now because I've been committed to soccer, and it was brilliant to come out, and it was good to see them. That was a great surprise.
What were you feeling when you got a chance, when Wolves contacted you and said, hey, we want you to come to the U.S. for this meetup? Like, that had to be pretty exciting, already being used as an ambassador for the club.
Yeah, it's kind of like my heart skipped, and I was on the motorway when I actually read the message from Wolves, and I had to stop at the next services just to read it even more, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. I just I couldn't wait to be out here. Anything to do with Wolves, I'm all theirs.
Do you find it funny, like, it's been a while since you were at Wolves, but you're still so beloved by the community, even from guys like me that just picked up the club a couple of years ago?
It just shows me what I did when I was at Wolves, at my time there. Everyone appreciated what I gave Wolves, both on and off the football pitch. And to look back after all these years, to be a big part of Wolves is massive, and I hope this can continue.
So what was your favorite memory at Wolves?
I've got lots of favorite memories at Wolves. Incredible memories. Obviously beating West Brom is one of those memories at home. But also scoring the goals I did against Manchester United was the top of the pinnacle at my time at Wolves. Just celebrating in front of the fans and being excited, being a part of the team that's just ended Manchester's 28 games unbeaten run. That to me was a peak of the bunch, out of the exciting memories I've got from Wolves.
That's awesome.
I was going to say 11 years ago you scored against Sunderland.
Yesterday, yeah.
My memories came up on Facebook.
Yeah, that was incredible as well. On that day, to be honest, going into that game, we knew only a win could do us, and to actually get the third goal in that game was just. It was electric. My celebration was electric. I wanted to rip off the Wolves shirt, the badge. I I was so excited, and I remember celebrating the goal. Or after the game as well, I was celebrating with the fans, and I think Stephen Hunt tried to to lure me away to say, oh, the job is not done yet. I was like, you ain't taking me out. You ain't taking me off this pitch. I'm going to celebrate with my fans. And I think the gaffer at the time, Mick McCarthy, had to wait for me to do his, be patient for me to come back into the change room so he could do his post-match team talk. But yeah, every time I wear the Wolves badge, every time I just have a look at Wolves, there's just something about me and Wolves. There's just something. It feels really good. There's a connection right there.
So it's got to be cool for you to come to the U.S. and see Americans following this little club in Wolverhampton.
Oh, I wouldn't say a little club, but it's really refreshing to see that we've got fans all over the world now, and to come out here and to meet the fans in close and personal, have a conversation with them, find out what states they've come from. It's really incredible. It's incredible, and I can't thank the fans enough for coming out here to meet us, but also to create that connection and keep growing Wolves all over the world.
Now, I heard you got a very important question asked on Friday. Who would win in an arm wrestling match, you in your prime or Adama?
George Elokobi, 100%. No question about that. But listen, it's all love with me. It's all love. I'm not a fighter.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Adama is a great guy. He's had a great career with Wolves, and I hope we can get him back on loan.
Yeah.
Because I think he's not quite settling yet at Barcelona. He excited us when we watched him. I actually watched him live against United back in October.
Right.
And he was unmarkable. They couldn't get close to him. And it's good to actually see that in person. And he's a fantastic player.
And then just seeing how beloved Raul is, too, all across North America is incredible.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. It's incredible. We went and caught, I think, a baseball match. But when we walk in the streets, we're bumping into people. When they look at the badge, they always associate it to Raul. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I actually took a photo with one gentleman outside there where we stayed, and he's a big Raul Jimenez fan, and to see that it's just it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It puts a smile on my face knowing that we got such a good backing, and someone like Raul has got great following all over, especially in America, in North America.
So I need you to do one more thing for me. I need you to say, this is George Elokobi, and you're listening to Whole Lotta Wolves.
This is George Elokobi, and you're listening to A Whole Lotta Wolves.
So that was George Elokobi, and Danny, like you said, man, just the nicest guy. And I think it was really cool how he was talking about just how honored he was by the club, that the club wanted him to come to Chicago. And it was really cool. His family surprised him from Dallas. They brought him up there. And he's going to be a real fun ambassador, Paul. He did mention that at some point he can come on the podcast again, like we've had with Steve Bull. So that's exciting. And just you can tell these guys really make the connection with Wolverhampton and the fans when they're doing events like this. What was your favorite George Elokobi memory, Paul?
I think it was more his dynamic with Mick McCarthy, and then Mick McCarthy saying that he had the same body as George Elokobi or something like that. So, yeah. But I just, on the pitch, as a player, he was one of those who gave 100% every game, and obviously had his limitations, but tried his utmost never to let him show that regardless of the opponent, he was there, and he would give his all for the team. And as a fan, that's all you ever asked for, that they put in the shirt and they'd run through a wall, and he had the body to actually run through the wall. So that was always good. And just nice things happened to nice people. And his was a proper rags to riches story, that he came from non-league and went all the way up the pyramid. So shows what can be done. And yeah, as you say, those types of people always come across well, and it just goes to realise how genuine they are.
Yeah, he was so fascinated with finding out how people became to be Wolves fan. It wasn't just walking around and just being like, oh, hey, how are you guys? Like, he wanted to hear everybody's story. He wanted to really talk to them about what makes you so passionate towards Wolves, because I do still think the people over in England, or the people that play, they look at it and go, how are these Americans latching on to this small little West Midlands team? Like, it's hard for some of them to understand. And that's what makes it cool. So it was a really fun meetup. Thanks to Joe Hunt and everybody else with the club that set it up. It was totally worth going. Had a great time. Drank a lot of beer with Danny and the guys. Dan John also got to wrestle with George Elokobi, which I think videos out there somewhere on Facebook or in somewhere, which was great. And really, especially thanks to everybody that had such great comments about the podcast and the work we're doing. I can't tell you enough how much we appreciate hearing that. And just knowing you guys are listening makes it super fun for us to get on here on Monday nights and record this. And it's just a lot of fun. So hope to see you guys again in the future. Hopefully it's this summer, wherever it's going to be, wherever they're going to play. It sounded like a lot of people are, they're going to be planning to go. But I feel confident that there may be a meetup in Houston this next season, Paul.
Okay, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. All right, so the end of the season is upon us, and at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, will be Wolves versus Liverpool. Liverpool still has something to play for after Man City got that stunning draw against West Ham. What are your thoughts on the lineup, Danny?
It's a really difficult one to predict for me. I mean, I think assuming that nothing crazy happens in Liverpool's game against Southampton and that the title is still potentially on for them, you can't experiment too much. I mean, we played an amazing game against them at Molineux, but that was at the height of our defensive rigidity. And I just don't know that you can really deviate too much from the sort of senior pros. Obviously, Saiss is still going to be out. So I'm pretty happy if Toady starts. But I think it's going to be a lot of the vets this time, and then whoever up front that Bruno thinks can nick a goal at some point. Who is that? I couldn't tell you. Neto, maybe? Fabio, even, honestly. He's good at playing off the shoulder.
Do you think, Paul, the 4-man back line comes out for the season finale?
I doubt it. Yeah, I doubt it. I think it will be potentially keep the 5, maybe the 3 in midfield and 2 up front again. Who those are in the forward positions, I'm not too sure of, because no one's massively informed there either. But by not getting a start against Norwich, I think that's a nail in the coffin for Trincao, as we mentioned, whereas Anfield would probably be one of those venues that he'd turn up and play if selected. So who knows? So it's just got a horrible air of inevitability about it. That there's just nothing to get excited about anymore, and it may just be a case of keeping the scoreline down. So that's never a nice game to go into.
Yeah, I'm gonna be definitely curious to see what the strategy for the game is, as far as is the strategy to try something new, get some of the young players out there, or try and go out and win and seal Liverpool's second place finish. Not really sure. Hwang's going to be an interesting. I think if Hwang's starting, we know that, they're just going with the status quo to start the vets or whatever. If Chiquinho starts, though, let's see. I hope he starts. I mean, he's got to start, right, Danny?
Yeah, probably. I mean, at least just to give the fans something to get excited about at the end of the season. I mean, yeah, we can't make European football anymore, but I still feel like a result here is still pretty important. Just to end the season on some kind of positive note. I mean, obviously, I think we'd all be happy with, or at least not sad about, a loss that we played well in. But, getting a draw at least would go a long way to settling some of the nerves from the fans about what is probably going to be a pretty tumultuous summer. So I think there's still a lot on the line, but all that said, I can't see that Chiquinho isn't involved unless he's, fatigued from playing so much recently compared to all the game weeks before, because he's just been so exciting and so direct. And if we're trying to just score a goal in the counter, he's a person who can progress us up the field better than most of our players. So.
All right, Paul, what's your prediction? Final prediction of the year?
I think it's going to have an air of end of season about it distinctly, where I think results from elsewhere may dictate the narrative, and it'll peter out into a 1-1 draw.
Danny?
Geez, Paul, you stole my prediction. Except I was going to lead into it differently. This is fully hard overhead. I think that if you're asking me what my head says, I say we're going to hold on for a very brave 20 minutes, and then Liverpool are going to have enough and just start putting them in. But if you ask me what my heart says, it's that it's going to be 1-1, and that Liverpool are going to score sometime devastating, like just before halftime, and then Wolves get some crazy counterattack off somewhere late in the game, definitely post 80 minutes, and that's the drama for the cameras, So
ready?
I'll go 1-1 also. Yeah,
you ready,
go
boys?
hit us, Josh.
Obviously, I was wrong about Manchester City's game. But I did say they were going to take points from either Man City or Liverpool, so I gave myself a little bit of a parachute. Wolves are going to win this 2-1. And they're going to win it because it's going to be 1-1 late. Liverpool's going to be pushing everybody forward to try and get those 3 points just in case. Wolves are going to hit them on a counter, and Fabio, in the 92nd minute, scores the game winner. That's for you, Todd DeWitt. That's for you. And then Wolves rated. Unfortunately, you lose your bet there right at the very end. So that's my prediction. 2-1, Fabio, game winner. Positive vibes going into the offseason until everybody's sold off. Okay, Danny, the men aren't the only ones worth talking about. The Wolves women had a lot of accomplishments this year, so can you give us the latest?
Yeah, not a huge amount has happened since the last update, except for another trophy. Not a lot of games, but one really important one. Obviously, the last time I mentioned Wolves women, they'd recently won the league. They then finished out the last few games, ended with a record 18-5 and just the one loss. And then this past Wednesday, they played in the County Cup final, which unfortunately was at the same time as the Man City game, which meant that fewer Wolves fans could make it there. But I think it was still a decent crowd because it was against the Baggies, so there's always something to see there. And actually started out a little bit shaky with Shan Turner in goal coming out a little bit prematurely on a ball, and Baggies scored, I think, in the first 5 minutes or so. But Wolves answered right back and ended up winning 4-1. Goals came from Amber Hughes, Maz Gauntlet, Anna Morfitt from the spot, and Tammy George. And apart from the penalty, actually, all the goals were scored from outside the box. There are some real crackers in there, so definitely get over to Wolves Women Media and see those goals. That's the third time they've beaten West Brom this season, and they've outscored them 9-1. So that's a pretty sweet score line for the season. It was really great to see them get recognition after the Norwich game. Unfortunately, in the U.S., if you're watching Peacock, you don't get to see any of that. But after the game, they were also there, being recognized for their achievements. 2 trophies, obviously, so far. and Tammy George receiving Player of the Season. Well deserved. I think you could make a season highlights of their goals that are just Tammy George goals. And then the last bit of news is they still have a promotion playoff to play this Saturday. Unfortunately, the situation in the women's league is that winning the league doesn't grant you automatic promotion, so you have to play a single game playoff with the winners of the Southern Division, which this time is Southampton FC Women. It looks like it's being picked up for a BBC broadcast or stream. So as far as I know, it won't be possible to watch in the U.S. even with a VPN, but I could be wrong. So definitely keep checking back with Wolves Women Twitter account to see if there are any updates. As far as I know, also the commentary will be available on BBC Radio Solent. Paul will have to tell me what Solent is. But anyway, the game is up in Stockport. And it's obviously the day before the Liverpool game with the men. So my understanding is a lot of UK-based Wolves fans are going to make a whole weekend of it and head up north and watch the women on Saturday and the men on Sunday.
Thanks for that, Danny. Paul, do we have any no stupid questions this week?
We've got one, Josh, and it is from Hullabaloo on Twitter. And he asks, in our opinions, would the EPL, and specifically the financial health and competitiveness of the smaller clubs, be better off in the long term if the Big Four had left and formed the Super League with the top clubs from other leagues, as was attempted last year?
So I've been thinking about this. I think on the surface, you'd say yes, because then it would make things more competitive. But let's be honest here. If those Big Four or six did leave for a Super League, the TV rights for the EPL would go way down. So yes, while there would be more parity because you wouldn't have those guys just completely outspending everybody, there would still not be extra money. In fact, there'd be less money for EPL teams to spend. So you'd still be competing against the Super League for players or, the big squads out at La Liga or the Bundesliga. So, on the surface, yeah, you may think it might be, but I think when you dive into it, no, it probably doesn't. Danny, you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing you have to remember is that famous cash flow that comes from getting promoted to the Premier League, a lot of that, all of it is broadcast money, and a lot of that comes from the fact that, 8 to 12 of your games are against world-renowned teams that are being broadcast all over the world. So, a team like, Bournemouth, who are coming back up, they're not going to attract a lot of eyeballs. But the reason why all that money comes in for broadcast is because you play Manchester United twice, and you play Liverpool twice, and you play Arsenal twice, and they all have huge worldwide fan bases.
And also, too, if those clubs did leave, you're going to leave Newcastle in there now, who's now Saudi-backed? Well, now they're going to spend all the money because they can be the top dog and earning whatever Champions League spot. There would be new owners that would come in and spend money, and so you'd still end up without a balance. It would kind of fall to whoever got bought by the biggest coffers, I think what's interesting now, did you guys see that the Chelsea deal may fall through?
So an article today about it, yeah, that there's some worry from government as well that's the case. So it's certainly not plain sailing.
Yeah, apparently the owner is going back a little bit on his all money will go to help Ukraine, and that he's almost willing to let the team go under because of it. So that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I've got a no stupid question. So George Elokobi was a bit of a cult fan favorite. Who do you think from the current Wolves squad, or maybe let's just say from the premier the era since we got promoted, who's going to be a cult fan favorite in 10 years, 20 years, depending on their age?
So I think we have to specify this, Paul, that if we're saying cult fan favorite, it can't be somebody like Neves, who is a guaranteed, or Raul. So it has to be one of those guys who still made an impact on the first team, but wasn't necessarily considered one of the huge stars. Obviously, you know who mine would be. Adama Traore. But Paul, would yours be Ryan Bennett?
I think we talked about him earlier on, and it will be the type of person like Romain Saiss that is the joke of the pack, and again has never let anyone down really in his tenure, and he came through the championship winning team just like Neves did, so he's always been there or thereabouts. Yeah, the headlines are rarely written about him, but I could see that he'd be the type of player, the type of character, the type of individual that had come back to a really good reception, and then would, having that tenure at the club in a really successful time, I think that would ingrain itself into him, and he'd count himself as a Wolf, deeply rooted. So I'll go with Saiss.
I think that's a way better answer than my answer.
Yeah.
because of the fact how Romain Saiss, you can tell he just really loves the club. And yeah, that's the feeling I got with George Elokobi. Even though he left Wolves and went to a lot of other places, like he still had his heart at Wolverhampton.
Yeah. I've got two answers for this, and they both play in the same position. And Paul guessed one of them. That's Romain Saiss. And I'm going to go ahead and say Toti Gomez has the potential.
Oh.
I mean, obviously, there's also the potential he blows up and he's the next Virgil van Dijk. But assuming we don't have the next Virgil van Dijk on our hands, I just think the way he charges around, he's not afraid to go into a tackle. He also has that slight rashness. I mean, if he's starting most of our games next season, I can almost guarantee you he's getting a red card at some point. And we're all going to be cursing it at the time. But then at the end of the season, assuming nothing disastrous happens from it, we'll be looking back on it saying, I like this guy. I like the way he puts himself about.
I could see John Ruddy being a big cult figure too. I think there's still a lot of appreciation for him, and I think he'd have the personality to really connect with everybody.
I think as well that whatever happens, I think it may even extend beyond cult hero just to hero in general, that Cody's got that, straight away. So he'd be given the key to the city, I think, and rightly so.
I think when Cody's term is over, him and Neves are going to be like the two guys from this era that are the most associated with it. Moutinho to a lesser extent, but because Neves and Coady were there moving up from the championship to the Premier League, I think when we think about this era of players, it's going to be Conor Coady and Ruben Neves.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And that brings this week's show to an end. So thanks again to Alex producing in New York. We've got Ron Firth in Canada who helps with our social media content. As we mentioned, it's our absolute pleasure to put this podcast out for you every week. And if you ever want to join us in a virtual drink while listening, then head over to www.buymeacoffee.com/WLW pod. We're going to be back next week. It's going to be a special end of season episode. We're inviting a bunch of guests and friends of the show on. So we'll review the Liverpool game, the season as a whole, and what the summer may bring. So in the meantime, up the mighty Wolves.